le président déchu et ses complices locaux et étrangers pour haute trahison et atteinte à la sûreté intérieure et extérieure du Niger.
Mohammed Bazoum, the deposed president of Niger, is facing prosecution for high treason. The military rulers who removed him from office said they have evidence against Bazoum for the treason and endangering the security of Niger in collusion with international and local allies. These are serious allegations, and depending on Nigerian law, he might be facing a long time in prison. And this is coming after the Nigerian military accepted to negotiate with ECOWAS. Of course, they set out conditions that should be met by ECOWAS before the negotiations can take place. Among these conditions is the removal of sanctions. The Nigerian military, having decided to charge Bazoum for treason, effectively shuts the door for the release of Bazoum. Or are they just doing it to have a leverage in the negotiations? Also, it effectively blocks any pathway for the return of Bazoum as president of Niger, because you can't make someone who is accused of treason the president. So it seems they've handled this situation better than ECOWAS leaders. ECOWAS leaders were so hasty in threatening Niger with a military intervention. This is after all the economic sanctions and border closures. So it seems the ECOWAS leaders underestimated the Nigerian military in their resolve to hold on to power and not return Bazoum to office. On Bazoum's side, he's already paying the price for a military intervention, held without trial for about 3 weeks under humiliating conditions. And if the treason trial will go on, he will definitely be facing a military tribunal, not a normal court. These are disadvantages of a military regime. They don't rule by the rule of law. In fact, they throw away the constitution. They don't go to normal courts. As you already know, a military coup is only illegal when it doesn't succeed. When it succeeds, it becomes a revolution. And the Nigerian military, having successfully revolted against their government, they now want to charge the former president for treason. With this latest move by the Nigerian military, maybe the pressure from ECOWAS and other forces pressuring them to reinstate Bazoum. Of course, they've changed a little bit. They're now saying release him because you are holding him without trial. They might now start asking them to temper justice with mercy. Yes, the ECOWAS leaders made a bad situation worse. Not everything is solved by force, just like the West that likes to lord it over people. In most places, they used force to solve a problem, made the situation worse. Look at Iraq. Yes, Saddam Hussein had his problems, but this country was stable. Look at how it is today. What about Libya? Interestingly, it was Sarkozy, the former president of France, who was accused of taking donations. Was it bribes? But it was worth millions of dollars. He was the one that led the bombing of Libya, later backed by NATO. So they made a bad situation worse. Look at Libya today. That's why all these military bases they have in Africa, from the Horn of Africa to Central Africa and West Africa, all these bases, look at Nigeria, it is surrounded already. How many military bases can be said to be enough for one country? It can only mean one thing. They are spying everyone, listening to everything. They call some of them drone bases like the one in Niger, but they all use them to gather information. What do they do with all this information? In fact, it's a huge security risk for Nigeria. Any military development that is going on in the country, they can easily pick them up. You are surrounded. They also have the capability to listen into your calls. They can actually hack into your calls and know what you're saying. Coming back to Niger, if you look at all the interested parties, France, United States, and ECOWAS, they are all based on selfish interests. Forget about the use of the word democracy. What France wants is to continue mining their uranium. They use the uranium to power their nuclear power plants. Of course, in France, majority of the electricity supply comes from nuclear power. They also want to maintain their influence on the country. If the Nigerian government wants to award a contract, for instance, they are most likely to award it to a French company. French companies dominate in Francophone countries in terms of award of contracts, building of roads, many things. In fact, the metro that Alassane is building in Abidjan was initially planned to be built by a Korean company. But all of a sudden, Macron came in, and before you know it, he was awarded to a French company. So France just wants to maintain their influence on Niger, nothing more. If the military in Niger calls France today, hey, come over, let's negotiate, they will forget about Bazoum. No one will talk about him anymore. They are fighting for their interests because the military boys are not easy to control. On the part of the United States, they just want to retain their military base where they just spent about $100 million to build. These military bases are just for spying and gathering information, like already said. The irony is that they themselves will never accept a military base near their border or their backyard. Remember the Cuban crisis during the 60s? When the USSR under Nikita Khrushchev moved ballistic missiles to Cuba? Remember the way the United States responded? It nearly led to war. Not that it is a good comparison, but it just gives you an idea of how they will react if you want to set up a military base in a neighboring country. All these major powers that you see, United States, France, UK, all of them, even Russia. Part of the reason Russia invaded Ukraine was because they accused them of moving closer to NATO, that they will never tolerate a NATO member near their border, near their backyard. So you can understand these guys, they are only after their interest. Even China, look at the way they are laying claim to the entire South China Sea. So they are all there for themselves. They don't care about someone else, although some of them do not believe in building military bases everywhere. Like the Horn of Africa, most of the foreign military bases there were built during the time the place was a nightmare for shipping vessels. So some of them believe in showing their power, having military bases everywhere, to quickly respond to anywhere and to gather information and spy people. People that listened into the calls of Angela Merkel, the former German chancellor. So you can understand how insatiable they are for information. They want to be ahead. They don't want to be taken by surprise.
In honest discussion to convince them to relinquish power.
On the side of ECOWAS leaders, one can say that they are working for the West. The Western powers are just speaking through them. Whatever you hear from them, take it as if it's a decision that has been taken with the Western powers before they voice them out. Another way to look at it is they say the guilty runs when no one is chasing them. Of course, Alassane Ouattara amended the constitution to have a third term. On Tinubu's side, he didn't win an election, but he was declared winner. He's still battling in court. So they are doing this also for themselves in a way, because they don't want such a thing to happen in their own country. They don't want military coup to remove them from power. So it will be interesting to see how the negotiations between the ECOWAS leaders and the Nigerian military goes. Will the ECOWAS leaders call their bluff? Or will they swallow their pride and remove the sanctions before any negotiations can take place? Yes, that's the conditions the Nigerian military set, that they cannot sit down on any table to negotiate with anyone without the removal of sanctions. The question now is, who will blink first? Many will be wondering why the Nigerian military didn't show any evidence of the high treason they accused Bazoum of. That's just the way of the military. If they accuse anyone of anything, that person will face a military tribunal and will be definitely thrown into jail. Theirs is, you're guilty until you can prove yourself innocent. But it's very difficult to prove yourself innocent because there's no fair trial. Unlike the courts, where you can get good legal representative that can prove your case. This happened a lot in the 90s in Nigeria under military dictator Sani Abacha. He threw a lot of people in jail under trumped-up charges. Once you oppose Sani Abacha, you're definitely going to jail if they can catch you. That was why many people ran to exile, because they couldn't stay in Nigeria and be opposing the military rule. And the only reason Abacha went so hard on the opposition to his rule was because he was busy stealing money. He was stealing them in cash, raw cash from the central bank, and laundering them to Europe, America, and many countries. In fact, one of the guys that helped him to launder all these billions of dollars has now been appointed a minister by Tinubu. So civilians aid military dictators to achieve their aim. Whatever they want to get, all the corruption, they are in on it with them. So the military regime in Niger should understand what is at stake. They might have support, but not the entire Nigerians support them. That's why they should work for their people and not be worse than the government they replaced. It shouldn't be about Bazoum. It shouldn't be about Chiani. It should be about Nigerian people getting good governance, getting their money's worth in everything they do in Niger. That's the most important thing. They're already facing a lot of opposition from the outside world, ECOWAS, Europe, America. Even within Niger, there are people who oppose their leadership. But they should try to solve their problems by themselves, not feeling that they have the ultimate power to crush any opposition or anyone standing in their way to achieve anything. They should not steal the people's money with impunity, thinking that no one can do anything to them, that they can get away with it. They should show leadership and prove the world wrong, that good things can come from Niger. Thanks for watching.